First, a new podcast about what happens when solving one problem inadvertently leads to new ones.
Juul is like not cool anymore. It's the Puff Bar, Elf Bar, and Escobar.
It's almost like we just can't stop this.
But this is not just a story about an industry gone wild. It's also a story about what we've
A new podcast explores the rise and fall of Juul, one of the most popular early vapes, which paved the way for an industry that has divided the public health community.
Backfired, the vaping wars also includes the first interview given by Juul's co-founder since leaving the company. We're talking to hosts Ariel Pardes and Leon Neyfakh. Good morning.
Good morning.
It seems like in this country, things like vaping can get started, and then the government comes along and says, wait a minute, what is this? Let me figure out if this is okay. Is that what happened here?
Pretty much. Juul burst onto the scene and sort of became a phenomenon around 2017, 2018, 2019. And the regulatory agency that would have been in charge of reining them in, the FDA, had to really play catch up and speed through closing various loopholes and making sure that they had some say in what was being put in these things and who was using them exactly.
I thought it was interesting looking at the development of the product that, there was, I guess, an initially intention that, hey, we're going to try to get people to quit smoking. But I understand that there's some controversy over whether or not it actually can lead to that, or is it just simply more addictive than cigarettes?
Yeah, we often forget in this story that over 500,000 Americans die of smoking-related causes every year. So solving that issue is like the white whale for so many people in industry and in public health. And when Juul came onto the scene, a lot of people thought, great, this is the answer. I think what people underestimated was just how much nicotine was in every Juul pod, and also how many people would pick up Juuling who weren't smokers. And so now we're in a sort of situation where nobody's happy with the state of vaping. The people who advocate for better access for smokers are not happy, and the people who are concerned about youth use aren't happy either.
Did the makers really believe that there was an upside, or is this like a selling point like the old tobacco companies, like it'll soothe that sore throat and help you lose weight?
I've been described as the naive one of the two on this point, but I frankly believe that they absolutely saw an opportunity to help millions of smokers who they knew are continuing their habit reluctly. They don't want to be smoking, but everything that's out there, like the patch, the lozenges, et cetera, they just don't work very well. And so my read on it is that the co-founders of Juul saw a huge market of people that would genuinely be helped by their product and also make them a bunch of money.
You talked about the FDA being a few steps behind, and then you have the rise of proliferation of these illegal disposable vaping products. What is the state of that now? Because you see this replacement product that potentially could be even more dangerous when we're not sure about the safety concerns there.
Yes, absolutely. When we started our reporting, we thought we were making a story about Juul, which for a long time was the market leader in vaping. It was this incredibly fascinating Silicon Valley company that was kind of entering the tobacco space. But what we learned very quickly in our reporting is that we're in this complete wild west of vaping, where the majority of the market is illegal, unregulated, untested, and largely coming from China. And so Juul became sort of only one part of this larger story about what's happening with vaping. And the sort of punchline is that it's much further from the grasp of the FDA than it was when Juul was the market leader back in 2018, 2019.
So could I
you've all probably seen these vapes as you walk down the street. I mean, they come in every shape and every color and every flavor, strawberry ice, raspberry, lemon, cheesecake, beach day, whatever you want. And it's really, as Ariel said, it's a wild west.
So,
Mike Tyson has a vape, Mike Tyson had a vape.
So can I bring this full circle? Did you ever approach the government and ask, why in this country do we not require manufacturers to prove that their food or whatever is not harmful, and do other countries do it differently?
Yeah, we actually spoke to both the current Center for Tobacco Products lead. This is the person who runs that center at the FDA, Brian King, and the former Center for Tobacco Products lead, Mitch Zeller. Brian King described it to us as whack-a-mole. He basically said, we're doing everything that we can to get a handle on this market, but we are a very small agency with limited resources. And the scale of this industry is just so massive that once you sort of crack down on one retailer, another one pops up. Once you crack down on one brand, another one pops up. And so that was sort of his explanation for where we are. Of course, there are other countries that do it differently. The UK has taken a much more harm reduction approach to vaping. And so some of the problems, are the same in the UK, but their government has been very clear in saying, instead of just trying to eradicate these kinds of illegal cheesecake flavored vapes that are targeting youth, we also want to make vapes available to smokers.
What is the founder of Juul? What does he think about the current state of the vaping market? And is he proud of the legacy he leaves behind?
I think he hates the current landscape. I mean, I don't think it's just because the current landscape is one in which Juul is no longer very popular compared to these newfangled vapes. I think he sees them as kind of giving a bad name to the ambitions that Juul stood for, because the people, I think, by and large, I don't want to generalize too much here, but the people who make these new disposables, like, just this morning I was passing a bodega in New York where you could buy Air bars and Puff bars and Miley's coming in peach ice flavors. I don't think most of the people who are producing these are primarily focused on helping smokers quit. And I think that's very disappointing to someone like James Monsees, the co-founder of Juul, who, again, maybe I'm naive, but I do think he really cares about the fact that his product can help people give up this habit, which is as bad as anything you could do to your body. I mean, smoking it cannot be overstated how destructive it is to your lungs, to your heart, to every part of your body. And vaping, while the longitudinal studies that will tell us what happens after 30 years of hardcore vaping will do, we know that they are not nearly as dangerous, not nearly as harmful for you as a cigarette.
Well, the podcast has backfired. The Vaping Wars available on Audible. You can get more at their site or follow Leon and Ariel on X. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.